another day the Lord's give us this morning. It's a pretty day out here today. The Lord's blessed us above and beyond measure. If we's honest about it this morning, He's given us a whole lot more good days than bad down through life if we pay attention to them. But we're just thankful to see another day. At least I am this morning. Got a couple of verses here in Mark chapter 4 I need to read from this morning. Ain't sure which way to go this morning, to be honest with you. Mark chapter 4 so I'll start about that 35th verse in there. Chapter 4 and 35 says, "In the same day when the even was come, he saith unto them, Let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship, and there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose, and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are you so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey? And I'm going to stop right there. We've read out of this chapter a lot down through time, and I've even had to preach out of it several times, but I've seen something that I hadn't seen before in this account, this record that happened. And we see Jesus and the disciples in a storm, and as they're headed out before that, Jesus tells them that they need to go on to the other side, and as they pass over, we know how that the great storm hits them this morning and how they have to go through it this morning. And I was thinking about how we all have storms in our lives that we go through, and there'll be many of them. That's the one thing about life this morning, is it doesn't matter if you're in a storm or you're just getting out of a storm in life. There'll be another somewhere down the line that you have to go through. That's just the way it is living this life. But how we deal with the storm and the purpose of the storm and who we look to in the midst of the storm of whatever's going on in our life, it defines how we'll face the next one this morning. If a tornado come across and I get tore all to pieces or whatnot and go hide under a rock or what it may be this morning, and the Lord protects me, then what makes me think this morning that I could stand out there in the wide open and everything would be all right? He gives the storm as an example for us to go through life and how we get through them this morning. And sometimes the storms that we go through mean different things in our life this morning. I know there's a way of thinking that's wrong this morning. We get in the habit of way of thinking, well, if I have to go through this storm, it's because I did something wrong. It's because of the life that I lived. That's not the truth this morning. The Lord may have you go through some storms in your life so that He can teach you something, so that you can be an example to somebody else that may have to go through that same storm. It's kind of like, I know several times over there where I work, all I can say is I'm sorry
when somebody loses a loved one, but when they lost a child, I don't know how that storm ends. I've never been through that, nor do I ever want to go through that this morning. So I couldn't give much advice in that storm, but somebody else that's been through that very same thing might be able to give a little advice, a little hope in the midst of that storm. We don't want to listen to people that ain't never been through nothing this morning, because they can't benefit us much. They don't know what we're talking about this morning. But those that have been through similar things this morning we'll tend to listen to, so that we can maybe get a little glimpse of something that might give us hope in the midst of the storm this morning. And so the storm that goes through our lives, it's not necessarily because we done something wrong. A lot of times it's just so that God can use it for His glory this morning. And the Bible teaches us about these storms. This morning the storm ain't going to make you comfortable in your life. It don't matter how you see it or how you go through it this morning. There's something about God this morning. He's not too worried about my comfort nor your comfort this morning, because His truth is going to return unto Him, and it won't be void, the Bible teaches us this morning. So He'll sacrifice our comfort to make sure His truth gets out this morning. It's been that way all the way through the Bible. You may not be comfortable in the storm you're in, but He's got a plan for you this morning. We think about Daniel in the lion's den. No doubt it wasn't comfortable for him to be down there in the lion's den with a bunch of lions that hadn't eaten anything and were starving to death this morning. No doubt that was beyond his comfort level to be down in there. Maybe the 3 Hebrew children, no doubt it was beyond their comfort level to be in the midst of that fiery furnace this morning. But yet He brought them through the midst of that trial, that tribulation, that storm this morning, so that they could come out on the other side and be a witness, so they could be an example this morning. That much of the same way this morning happens here. And it's a lot of times we think, well, the storm is going to overtake me, and what am I going to do? Look to Jesus for all things this morning. You've got to look for Jesus in the midst of whatever storm you're going through this morning, because I promise you, in the middle of that storm, Jesus is there with you. And the Bible said that He'd never leave you nor forsake you this morning. He'll go with you to the very ends of the earth this morning. He's not going to leave you alone in the storm. But we can get in the midst of the storm and fail to look for Him. We can get in the midst of complaining and grumbling and murmuring this morning and fail to look for the Son of God in the midst of that storm, that He might get glory out of it. Well, preacher, surely He wouldn't put me in the midst of an uncomfortable storm so that He might get glory out of it. I'll have you go back and read about Lazarus there, and how they sent, his sisters sent for Jesus, and they sent to Jesus and told Jesus that, hey, your friend Lazarus, he's sick unto death. If you want to see him, you better get down here, because he's fixing to die. They were going through a storm in their life, Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And Jesus, in a faraway country there, He sends word back and tells them, this sickness is not unto death this morning, but that the Son of Man might receive the glory this morning. That's what it's about. And so Lazarus had to die, and for 4 days Mary and Martha were crying and tore up and upside down, worrying about it. And finally Jesus comes. They still don't understand why they're in the middle of this storm. They still don't understand why they lost their brother, and why Jesus never came, the one that could heal him. They didn't understand that the sacrifice was made for their comfort, that the glory of the Lord might be shown to a people that didn't understand this morning. And so when Jesus goes up to the tombs and cries out, Lazarus, in the midst of a death storm, we find that Lazarus comes out of that tomb, and it brings glory to Jesus Christ this morning. It wasn't about Martha and Mary's comfort. It wasn't about even healing Lazarus this morning. It was about glorifying the Son of God this morning, giving Him the glory and the honor and the praise that He's due this morning. So the storm that you go through might be just to glorify Him this morning. Well, preacher, surely it ain't that way. Sometimes He'll steer you into the storms on purpose this this morning. Preacher, surely He wouldn't want me to do that. He did these disciples here, didn't He? Jesus knows all things, don't He, this morning? He knows how the very hairs of your head are numbered this morning. He knows what you're going to face in the future. He knows what you came out of in the past, and He knew about these disciples this morning. He tells the disciples, knowing that there's a storm they're going to have to face. Before that, He said, let us pass over onto the other side. He knew what was coming. He knew the storm was on the horizon. And even though He knew they'd have to go through it to get to the other side, He said, let us pass over to the other side. And they get in the midst of the ship, and they were uncomfortable, no doubt, like many of us are in storms of life. We don't like how it makes us feel. We don't like how the pain hurts. We don't like the thought of how our world's going to change this morning. And they were in that same shape. Jesus was asleep in the hinder part of the ship, on a pillow there, just sound asleep. And the ship's filling up with water. The storm's raging. No doubt the waves lapping up against the side of the boat. And they were still just tore up and scared to death, and come back and call upon Jesus and wake Him up and said, hey, ain't you worried about this thing we're going through this morning? Jesus was unconcerned because He knew that He was in control of it all this morning. And so the disciples had to look towards Him in order to find any peace and safety this morning. And so that'd be the same with us. You've got to look towards Christ in whatever storm that's in your life, and that you might find peace and safety. You may not be comfortable. You may not even like being in the storm. But hold true and hold fast this morning, and keep your eyes upon Jesus, because the storm that you come through will teach you something in the end, that you might be a help to somebody else. Well, preacher, how could that teach me anything? How could that? The disciples are in this ship. They go through this storm. They wake Jesus up. He commands, rebukes the wind. He commands the sea to be still this morning. And they go on to the other side. But you go on 2 chapters past this, and you'll find, I think it's in the 6th chapter there's another storm. Children, I'm going to tell you something. You may make it through one storm in life. You may have to go through 2. Or you may have to go through a half a dozen or more storms. There's always another that comes back around. Just like last year, we had a few storms along the way, and sure, as springtime comes, we'll have some more storms. Last year, we might have had a few little winter mists here, there, and yonder, a little bit of snow. And as sure as winter hits, we'll have a few flurries again this year. And because there's always another storm on the horizon. But being prepared for that storm is where we're called to be this morning. Prepared in the midst of it. These disciples went through that first storm, and Jesus woke up and calmed the storm. Now we find in the next chapter over, we find they're headed across again, and there's another storm. It's different than the last one, but it's still a storm nevertheless. And we find as these disciples are in the boat and they're rowing, giving their all, they're paddling with everything that they've got. The storm's tossing them to and fro, and the difference is in this storm, in this boat, Jesus is not in the boat this morning. The Bible said He went apart up yonder into the mountain to pray. And as the disciples are in the boat in the storm, they look up and they see Jesus walking across the top of the water. And they see that it's Him this morning. And Peter, we hear, he bids Jesus, he said, if you bid me to come out of the boat, he said, I'll come. In other words, and Jesus told him to come on. He would have never thought about getting outside of that boat in this chapter we're reading this morning. He would have never dreamed about exiting that boat in the middle of the storm up to that point. But because Christ had brought them through that last storm, because Christ made the waters to be still and the wind to stop, they understood and had a knowledge about them that, hey, Christ, the one that's over yonder walking across the water, Peter said, I know He's in control of it all. And if He asks me to come, then I'll be all right. And the Bible says how that Peter stepped out of the boat and he began to walk on the top of the water. He did that because he'd been through a storm previously. previous, he'd been through another storm and seen what the outcome was. Did that leave Peter knowing all things? Of course it didn't this morning. Because even though he's outside of the ship, in the middle of a storm, even though he's standing on top of the water, in the middle of a storm, he's still, that carnal mind kicks in, and he begins looking for a wind that he cannot see, and feeling the storm and its effects, and takes his eyes off Jesus and begins to sink. But because he'd been through that first storm, he knew who he could call upon. And because he watched them as they called upon Jesus asleep in the hinder part of the ship, Peter cries out unto Jesus, Lord, save me. And Jesus comes and lifts him up and sets him in the midst of the ship this morning. Peter wouldn't have had the knowledge, nor would he have the strength this morning if he hadn't have been through the first storm that he went through. But because he came out of it, he had a little more strength this time than he did the last time. That's the way God's storms affects us in our life. And you may come out of one all right, but the next one it's going to be a little different. But you use what you learned in the last storm to affect the storm that you're in this morning. And life changes. We can't help that this morning. We get older down throughout life, and we have different things that we have to face. But as we face them this morning, you keep your eyes and your focus upon Jesus, because He's greater than the storm this morning. He's greater than all things. This morning, there's another one coming just as sure as you're sitting here this morning, and it may turn your family upside down. It may cause all kind of destruction. But keep your eyes upon Jesus, for He is your hope. And the Bible teaches us about a hope here on this side. It said if we just have our hope is just on this side alone, we're men most miserable this morning. Our hope is in Jesus, the one that's seated at the right hand of the Father this morning. Our hope is in Him that's King of kings and Lord of lords, the one that walked across the tops of the water when the storm was raging this morning. Our hope is in Him. But as we're on this side this morning, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have trials. You're going to have storms. The Bible told us in Job, and when Job's describing the life of man, he said, man is a few days and born a woman and full of troubles this morning. We're full of it this morning, troubles in our life. But the storm don't have to define your losses this morning. A storm don't have to define your misery this morning. A storm don't have to define your happiness this morning, because you can be happy in a storm. It's hard to do this morning, but when your eyes are focused on Jesus this morning, there's a happiness and a peace that comes with it. And sure, it's hard. You may be like the disciples were in that next storm as they were rolling with everything that was in them, but yet Jesus still came by. He'll come by in your life just the same. But if you ain't looking for Him, guess what? You'll never see Him this morning. The Bible tells us this morning that if we seek Him, He'll be found of us this morning. He said if we'll look for Him this morning, if we'll just search for Him this morning, you'll find Him, and you'll see what great things He's got in store for you. These disciples were in a ship. The boat's filling up with water. I guess it would have been a time that we'd all abandoned ship and jumped out and said, it's over, every man for himself. That's the nature of man this morning. The nature of man wants you to give up on everything and think that you can solve the problem on your own. You can't solve the storm on your own. You're not in control of it this morning. It's not of your creation. It's in God's control this morning. So what makes us think that we can control or defeat something that is in the power of God? You can't this morning. But the only way that you can control a storm is looking to the Creator, the author of that storm. Looking to the one that tells the sea to be still. Looking to the one that calms the storm just by addressing it this morning. That's the only way. And once you've been through one storm, guess what? You got strength for another one. Because you know that, hey, I come out of that and all right. I think we can tear all right with this one. I come out of that and it had my life upside down, but I know Jesus is with me. He said He'd never leave me nor forsake me. So I think I'll be all right in this storm. I'm just going to look to Him. And if I ain't all right, it's all right either way. way this morning. I may die on this side today. I might die in the midst of a storm. But guess what? If that's what God desires this morning, it's all right either way. As the old song says, I'm a winner either way this morning. Paul said, Paul begins to tell him, he says, I die daily. He said, although I be absent from the body, it's to be present with the Lord this morning. He said, it doesn't matter either way this morning. The storm may kill me. The storm may wipe me out for whatever reason God sees fit. But it's all right either way, because I know the master of the storm. I know the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I know the one that will take me on to that place called heaven. And He's in control of it all. Our lives this morning are here to give Him glory. To give Him glory. The Bible teaches us that we don't live unto ourselves no longer after salvation. We die unto the old man, and we're brought forth as a new man this morning. We put off the old man, put on the new, and we begin to walk in the likeness of Jesus Christ this morning. Matter of fact, the Bible defines it. It says, raised to walk in the likeness of Jesus this morning. Well, preacher, surely that means that I belong to myself. No, after you're saved, you're purchased this morning. Do you realize that this morning? Years or thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, they would buy people on an auction block, slaves or whatnot. And yet, when somebody would purchase them, they belonged to that owner this morning. It's the same way as it is with God this morning. Guess what? On that auction block, Jesus Christ went, and He paid the debt to purchase you, to buy you, to redeem you from your sins. And guess what? He became the author and the owner of your life this morning. He owns everything about you, from the hair on your head down to the bottoms of your feet this morning. He owns the breath that's in your lungs. He owns the blood that flows through your veins this morning. He owns everything about your life this morning. And so He's in control to do with it what He sees fit. And you see this morning, if He wants to use you to get His glory, He will this morning. And we ought to be pleased with that. We ought to desire that this morning, that every step of our life in the midst of a storm will glorify Him and not glorify the things that we do wrong or the fears that we have. These disciples come to Jesus. He's asleep in the hinder part of the ship. And as they come to Him, they begin to question Him. Ain't you worried about this? Ain't you scared about this? We're all fixing to die. And Jesus don't say a word to them. He don't even acknowledge them, the Bible teaches us. And yet He rebukes the wind, something they could not see. Who here this morning could rebuke the wind and cause it to stop blowing? Who here this morning could say to the sea, peace, be still, and it becomes still as a piece of glass this morning? Jesus did. And as He stands there, as they see the calmness of the ocean and the calmness of the wind, He looks at them and He asks them a simple question that probably cut them down to the quick this morning. He said, why are ye so fearful? Why are ye so fearful? What are you afraid of this morning? Well, preacher, I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of that. If my hope's in Jesus, there ain't no reason to be afraid this morning, because He's done conquered hell, death, and the grave. And somebody that's done conquered that, that means this morning that death has no dominion over me, because I've been born again. That means that the grave has no hold on me this morning, because I know the resurrection. Jesus said, I am the resurrection this morning. The death, hell, and the grave have no control over where I go or nothing this morning, because Jesus paid for me on the auction block of Calvary and died for my sins and your sins this morning, so that you could have life and have it more abundantly, so that you could have an everlasting life this morning. He paid for you with the most precious thing that He had this morning, and He purchased you. So in the midst of that storm, you look to the owner this morning of your life. You look to the master of your life this morning. It's Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. Oh, Peter, he would fall short down throughout life, and guess what? God expects us to fall short down throughout life too. He knows we're fallible. He knows that we'll mess up. He knows that we'll fall away from time to time. But He also knows that we belong to Him, and He brings us back into the place that He can use us in His life this morning. You see, your life is so much bigger than you. And people fail to realize this morning. Your life is so much bigger than you this morning. It's so much bigger than me this morning. You see, life will continue on whether I live or die. If I die this morning, guess what? If the time goes on to the next Sunday morning, you'll be right here at the same church. You'll have to be having meetings just the same way. I believe that this morning. You see, because God is so much greater than we are this morning. But we're just that vapor the Bible teaches us. We're here for just a little while. We're here for just a short time. And we affect what we can affect. We do the bidding of God while we're here. And we try to show people and help people along the way. But finally there comes a time when my vapor has to disappear. The Bible asks a question, or begins to expand and tell us what a life is but a vapor in time that appeareth for a little while and then vanisheth away. There'll come a time when I vanisheth away on this side. I preached it before this morning. The time continues on, maybe 25, 50, or 100 years from now. Nobody will know who Josh Petticord was. They'll never know who he was or what he stood for. All I'll be maybe at the very most is a name on a rock with a little dash in between my birth date and death date this morning. But I think about that old preacher that preached on the dash a lot, that's on that old headstone. Oh, there's so much that could be wrote in the middle that the world will never know. There's so many storms in my life that'll be wrote in the middle that the world will never see that I went through. There'll be so many outcomes of the storms in my life that I went through that the world will never know. And so I only affect the people. I can only be a help to the people that I see today, for tomorrow may not never come this morning. The storm in your life is so that you can be a help to somebody that's alive today that might stand in need of the knowledge that you have and how you came out of it. Well, preacher, that's crazy. Surely nobody needs to hear anything I do. Have you ever tried just to be a friend and listen to somebody's story and the things that they're going through? We don't like to hear it because it brings us downhearted and we begin to be sorrowful and we begin to hurt for them to go through that. But children, you need to listen to those storms that they're going through and encourage them as they're going through them and let them know what helped you the most. What helped you the most to come through it. I've told you many times I went through a storm in my life, couldn't walk. But I remember laying in the hospital bed over at Morristown, Hamlin, feeling sorry for myself. I worried that I wouldn't be able to provide for my family. Worried that I wouldn't be able to provide for my kids and my wife. I wondering what the next move was. I thought I'd be better off if I was dead and buried. And thought my family would be too. But I remember having a thought in that hospital bed that I needed to hold the Bible just for a little while. And I told Shell to hand me the Bible off that stand to where she did. And I just opened it up one turn. Never flipped through the pages. Never looked to see what I might be looking for or what might help. I just opened it up, and there in the Corinthians I read what it wrote. He said, as he began to tell me, he said, my grace is sufficient for thee, for in your weakness my strength is made perfect. Children, that's what helped me through that storm of life. For me to understand that, hey, my weakness makes him stronger. When I'm at my weakest point, he becomes the strongest person in my life this morning. He said, my grace is sufficient for thee, for in your weakness my strength is made perfect. How in the world could that happen? Because we find ourselves in the weakness of storms, like the life storms this morning. We find how weak we really are. Nobody likes to be called weak, but the truth of the matter is we are this morning. But we find in the midst of the storm we're weak. We can't control things. We can't handle things. We don't know what to do. But we find in the midst of that weakness that we understand that, hey, who's stronger than the sea? Who's stronger than the wind? Who's stronger than everything? It's Jesus. He says, my strength is made perfect. Children, that's what gets us through the storms of life this morning. And I know as you go through storms, there's different things you faced already. If you think back how you got through them, it wasn't by anything that you did, but it was by everything that He did. Just the same with these disciples this morning. They didn't get on the other side by anything they did, but by everything that Jesus did. Because He said, peace be still, and the waters cease to rage this morning. You may go through storms in your life where you lose people. You may go through storms in your life where the devil tempts you. But guess what? Jesus is stronger than the devil. He's stronger than loss this morning. He's stronger than everything. And so we look to all these different storms in life and we think about what Jesus can do. This wouldn't be the last. This was the first of many storms that Peter would find himself in. There would be many storms that Paul would find himself in. Do you remember reading in the book of Acts how Paul was a prisoner and they put him on a ship because he claimed a Roman citizenship and he wanted to go before the governor, and they put him on a ship and he said, I don't think it's a good idea, fellas. We'll be in great danger if we go out there during the storm season. But they cut loose the ropes and went anyway, and it finally came to a point that the storms was raging and they were coming and the ship was breaking apart, and Paul tells them, he said, except ye abide with the ship. This morning, except ye abide with Jesus Christ, you'll no way make it through this life this morning. What do you mean by that, preacher? Because Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life this morning. And in knowing that, who is your ship? It's Jesus Christ. He's everything to me this morning. He's the one that gets me through the storms and the oceans of this world. He's the one that brings me out on the other side. Paul said, except ye abide with the ship, you'll no wise live. And so that's what we do this morning. We hold on, maybe just a sliver of a piece of a ship. We hold on with everything that's in us, and He'll bring us to shore safely this morning. Jesus tells these disciples, He asked them, He said, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? How is it you ain't got no faith? How is it you don't believe? You got to think about what these disciples saw. They've seen the woman just previously that had the issue of blood for 12 years. And the Bible says she paid the doctors all that she had. And she went through some, no doubt, grievous things, some hard things in life. And she finally got to the point of saying, if I can just touch the hem of His garment. And they see this woman made whole. Just previous to this, you read about how that He gives sight to the blind and those that are sick, and He heals them and different things. And yet they've seen all this, and now they're in the ship and they have no faith. They've seen miracle after miracle, and yet they're in the midst of the ship and they still have no faith. We're no different. This morning, we believe till we're out of the storm, and then when you're out of the storm and everything's going good, you start to slack off and backslide a little bit on your faith this morning. And so till the next storm arises, and then you begin to remember the last storm this morning. He asked him, he said, how is it that you have no faith? And that brings me to the thought that Jesus asked when He's coming down to the end of the way. He said, when the Son of Man returneth, shall He find faith? I didn't ask it, Jesus did. Look it up. He said, when it comes down to the end this morning, shall He find faith? Is He going to find faith in you? Is He going to find faith in me? Is He going to find the faith that we trust in Him through the storms of life that are raging against us, and yet we trusted Him, and we have all faith, and we have everything that we know that we believe this morning, that we trust in, that we look to Him for all things. Shall He find faith in your life? Shall He find faith? Well, preacher, I got faith. It ain't that strong, preacher. Well, the Bible said He dealt every man the measure of faith. Everybody started out with the same amount. I believe this morning. You may not believe that. That's all right. I still love you. But He dealt unto every man the measure of faith. Now, how strong your faith is today compared to how strong it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, that's totally up to you. You can trust in Him and exercise that faith, or you can just set it on the shelf and let it collect dust this morning. Because, well, preacher, surely that faith that He gave me will get me through. It will this morning. But if you never use it, it ain't going to get you nowhere. It'll just get you heartache and trouble this morning. But when you step out on faith like Peter, these disciples, and trust in Jesus Christ, He can say, peace be still this morning. Well, preacher, surely that measure of faith that he dealt to me, that's good enough this morning. I don't know this morning, because you find the different servants that had the talents, and he had different numbers for all of them this morning. I can't remember the exact numbers, but he had some servants that had a whole lot of talents, and a few servants had less than them, and the last servant didn't have hardly any. But they find the first servant, he would go out and use the talent that God had given him to double it. And the next servant, he did about the same. But that last one, he took the talent that he had and he just hid it and covered it up and hid it from the world, because he's afraid when the master returned that if he didn't have it, he'd end up in trouble or put to death this morning. Well, he's dealt unto you the measure of faith. And so what you do with that faith this morning is up to you. You can use it to multiply. You can use it as an example of people and see people that end up with salvation and hear the testimony of those. And because you taught them and helped them and prayed for them and were a guide to them, you discipled them, or whatever you want to call it this morning, because you used the measure of faith that God gives you to lead other people to Christ, God will be more pleased. Or you can take that measure of faith. What is that measure of faith? Lord have mercy. What is that measure of faith? The same one that we don't like to think about, but the Bible tells us that the devil believes and trembles. He knows who Jesus is this morning. You have the measure of faith that you know that Jesus Christ is real this morning. He's alive forevermore. But now whether you trust Him and call upon the name of the Lord and be saved is up to you. But you can hide that little talent behind you and cover it up. And guess what? When He returns, guess what's going to happen? He'll take it away and give it to somebody else, just like He did the servant's talents. What do you mean by that, preacher? If you've not stepped out on faith to be saved, preacher, surely it ain't that much. It's more than you ever understand this morning. You've got to step out on faith and call upon the name of the Lord and receive that salvation that comes only from Him and directly from heaven this morning. You've got to step out on that faith and exercise it and cry out to God and exercise that heart this morning. The heart believeth unto righteousness, and mouth confessions made unto salvation. You step out on that measure of faith and call upon the Lord for Him to save you. And guess what? He'll save your soul this morning. But you can hold on to that little bit of mama faith. Mama told me about Jesus, but I ain't sure about it. You can hold on to that little bit of papa faith. Papa told me about Jesus, but I ain't never come to it. You can hold on to that. Guess what this morning? My papa's salvation won't get me into heaven, Gene Baker. My mama's salvation don't get me into heaven just because they were saved. Don't mean I'm saved. What gets me into heaven is the blood of Jesus Christ, that I called upon Him in fear and weakness and trembling. And I called upon the name of the Lord and He saved me. And guess what? That won't get my children into heaven. That won't get my grandchildren into heaven. They'll have to come to it the same way I did. Step it out on the measure of faith this morning. Have we done that? I hope and pray we did. He saved us unto a good work, the Bible teaches us. And He asked these disciples, men that knew better, men that understood more than we even understand today, men that had been through a few things and seen a few things this morning. And He asked them this question, how is it that ye have no faith? We ain't seen nothing yet this morning in this world. I think it was last Sunday we was talking about it. These little children like Drake and these little babies along, they'll see a whole lot worse than we can even dream or imagine if time goes on. Things that we wouldn't even imagine this morning. And so the only thing we can do for them, the only hope they have this morning, is that we teach them about the measure of faith in Jesus Christ, our King of Kings and Lord of Lords, that we live a life as an example of Christ in our daily walk before them, that somewhere down the line they'll see that they stand in need of Jesus. Preacher, surely we don't have to do all that. It's between them and the Lord. I beg to differ. He went and He'd send a disciple out to do His will, didn't He? Jesus could have went on His own if He took a notion, but yet He sent a disciple out here to different places He'd send Paul to foreign countries. He would send Peter down to Cornelius' house, a place that he didn't want to be. And that's the same way as he does us this morning. He sends us out of the boat, into the storm, trusting in Him, believing in Him. This morning there's storms coming in your life that I can't even think of, and you can't neither. It'll hit you out of left field, and you don't even know where it come from, and you won't know how to get through it, except you look to Jesus. And I hope and pray you do. I pray for you, and I believe prayer works this morning, and I believe we ought to pray for one another, because I know what it is to live off the prayers of somebody else. I know what it is to feel guidance from the prayers that somebody else prayed. I know what it is to not be able to pray this morning. And it's a scary thing when you get down to a point in life that you can't pray. I've been there, children. I know it's a scary thing to come to reality that you know that you can't get a hold of God, that you can't pray. I've been there. And children, you begin to live off the prayers of those that's around you, those that's prayed before you, those that are coming after you, that are still praying for you. This morning, children, we've got to have the prayers of each other this morning, because we all face different storms. So pray for one another. I can't go any further this morning. I guess this is about the craziest or weirdest text I ever had to pull out of the Bible. I still don't understand it all, but it makes sense to me this morning. There's another storm coming. Are you ready? There's another one coming. Are you ready for it? Are you making sure that everything's ready? Old sailor's got a boat, and he's tied it up to the bank and tied it up to the port there. He makes sure if a hurricane's coming, he makes sure all the lines are secured. The old phrase, batten down the hatches. You want to make sure that if any waves overtake it, that it can't get on the inside of the boat, so they'll batten the hatches down and seal them off. The storm's coming, and preparation's got to be made. Have you got them all made in your life? Are you prepared the best way that you know how? Jesus can help you prepare this morning if you just turn to Him. I love you this morning, this as far as I can go. And the Lord loves you more than you could ever even imagine. More than we could ever dream. You know, we question a lot of things with God, and we wonder why. I can't help it. I'm a why person. There's things I wonder why. And He'll give us insight into it the older we get as we go throughout life. Some things it may not be for us to understand now. It may take 20 years to understand. Maybe not at all on this side, but there's coming a day that we enter in that place called heaven. And the Bible said we'll see Jesus. We'll see Him as He is, and we'll be as He is. I look forward to that day. I look forward to going home. I'm tired. I can't help it. I was thinking this morning, I'm just drained. I'm tired physically, tired mentally, tired emotionally. I'm just tired. I find myself wondering, Lord, why don't you just take me on out of here? I just drained. I can't get no strength except to come from the Lord. But guess what? It don't matter how tired I am, the storm will still come. And we'll still have to face it. As tired as you may be, God will be there with you. As little as you may be, Christ will be there with you. As hopeless as everything may look, He's right there with you along the way. You see, God will fight your battles if you'll let Him. If you'll let Him. Let Him be the mightier, stronger one. I love you this morning. I know the Lord loves you too. And let's get a song. Come around the altar. Do what God would have us do.